Now we come to the most important part of the day, the congressional meetings. I know that this is the part of the day that makes people the most nervous, but want to say don't worry. First off, we'll talk you through how your meetings should be conducted. You'll also have talking points for each of the legislative issues to help you understand what you should talk about. But two things to remember. First, the most important part of the meeting is to educate the staff or the member of Congress about the profession of occupational therapy. If you struggle with some of the legislative talking points, that's okay. You are not expected to be the expert on anything except the profession itself. Any questions they have, they can be referred to AOTA Federal Affairs. Secondly, remember, you know how to build relationships. That is what occupational therapy practitioners do. You know how to reach out to people. You know how to make people feel comfortable. So think of the congressional staffer in the same way you would think of a client. Approach them the same way, personably, open, and ready for a discussion. I wanted to reiterate a couple things that may surprise you. First is the meeting location. House offices have very little space, so you may be meeting in a small and crowded area or in a non-traditional area like a hallway or a cafeteria. This is no reflection on you. It's really all the space that they have. But just be prepared to stay focused even if there's noise or other people walking around. Second is the meeting length. Meetings should generally be 15 to 20 minutes. They can be anywhere from 10 and be successful to 30 and be successful. But be well aware that the staff's time is precious. So if you've made your point and you're finished, don't feel like you have to stay and talk to fill the whole 30 minutes. At the same time, if the meeting is very conversational, be sure to make the points about the issues and be clear and concise about those issues. Even if the staff is chatty and you're having a good conversation, keep the meeting to that 30 minutes because they may have, even if they're enjoying the meeting, they may have someplace else they need to be. Finally, members of Congress. If a member of Congress is in on your meeting, it's quite likely that they'll only be in on part of your meeting. So they may only stay for the first few minutes to say hi, or sometimes they'll even show up towards the end of the meeting. This can be somewhat confusing because you're halfway through your pitch and then the member of Congress comes in. You can touch back to the points that you've already covered very quickly and say, as I was just discovering with your staffer, or use their name though, and run through the quick points and then pick up where you were unless they have questions. Earlier in the orientation, we discussed some of the talking points that you're going to be going over in your meetings, but I wanted to take the time to talk a little bit about the flow of your meeting. When you first come into the office, there will be somebody at the front desk and they'll ask who you're meeting with or what group you're with, and that way they can let the person know that you're there. Later, the staff or the member of Congress will come out, shake your hands, and take you to wherever your meeting space is going to be, whether that's the hallway, a small table, or the member's office. Hopefully the member's office, but not always. Once you're in there, you should take the time to introduce yourself. Introductions are really important for big groups. Not everybody's going to be able to talk on the issues, so this gives you a chance to at least introduce yourself. And introductions also let you base yourself in their community. So you're different from me coming in. I'm not a constituent. By talking about where your training is, where your practice is, that helps show that you are from their community. If it's a very large group, you should probably introduce yourselves in groups, that we're a group from Shenandoah University or whatever program you're with. That is the best way to get through large groups. And by a large group, I mean anything over about 12 people. After that, you're going to provide a quick overview of occupational therapy. And the best way to do this is to start by asking, how familiar are you with the profession of occupational therapy? This is a great opportunity to find those people who really know the profession. Their mom is an occupational therapist, their sister is an occupational therapy assistant, their best friend is is in school right now. Those are the people who we want to know, and you should definitely get back to us with that information if there's someone who's really familiar with the profession. More often you get a response that's something like, I'm somewhat familiar, I think I know what you do, or they'll give you one example of something that you do. This is your opportunity to give that quick introduction to the profession, but it's very important to give that introduction because it's going to really be the grounding for everything else that you talk about. If the person doesn't understand what OT is, they're not going to understand the rest of the talking points. So take the time. In your homework, one thing we ask you to do is make sure that you develop your elevator speech or your 1 minute so that you're ready for this part of the meeting. As you go through your legislative issues, choose the issue you're the most comfortable with to begin, because you may find that at the end of that discussion, the meeting's sort of reaching a conclusion. Maybe the person was really engaged in that issue. That's okay. If you only cover one legislative issue, but it was really engaging, you've been successful. So move through the issues as you're the most comfortable. Then at the end, be sure to thank them for their time. And then ask what's the best way to follow up with them. After your meeting, you're about 60% of the way through. Follow-up is the next 40%. You've hooked them with the meeting, you got to reel them in with the follow-up. And the best way to do that is ask them what's the best way and what is the best time frame. It may be that they're not going to be able to ask their boss about this issue for another month for good reason. So that means in a month you're going to want to follow up with them. The follow-up means that they need to be accountable to you, and it's really important. Usually they're going to give you their card and they're going to say, shoot me an email. A couple of other meeting pointers. Be sure to avoid medical jargon or acronyms. Particularly on the House side, Congressional staff have many responsibilities. They may handle healthcare, agriculture, and defense. And the only people who have more acronyms than the medical field is the defense industry. I promise you, it's twice as many. So the acronyms can be very confusing, even if they're ones that you are quite comfortable with. So for example, ADL is one that we live and die by, but they may not be familiar with what that means. So if you say ADL, back up and say activities of daily living. Remember that familiarity with our issues may vary greatly. You may have a new staffer who doesn't know what occupational therapy is, doesn't know what the therapy cap is, and it's a different conversation than someone who's been there for 10 years and seen the process unfold and have tracked the issue. So get a read on how familiar with the issue and make your explanations shorter or longer to fit with this. Be an honest broker. Your credibility really is everything. It is okay if you don't know the answer. So you can say, I don't know the answer to that question, but AOTA staff can help you with that. You will have an opportunity on your feedback forms to give us that information that we need to follow up with that office. They would rather you be the expert on occupational therapy than an expert on the ins and outs of legislation. And if anyone gives you a hard time for not knowing all of the ins and outs, I say that's on them, that they should know better. That's very rare that happens, that one continues to push, but just let them know that someone from AOTA can get back from you. And remember, your expertise is on the field of occupational therapy, not the ins and outs of the legislation. Even after all of the preparation, we expect that you may have some nerves on the day of when you finally get into those meetings. This is perfectly natural. We all do. I still do. But so we have a couple of tools to help you be successful despite those nerves. The first is that you will have a set of talking points. These talking points are for you only. They are not for leave behind. The talking points are included in your list of prep. but you will also have a copy in your packet that we give you the day of Hill Day. So you can print them out and bring them with you, or you can receive them while you get there. The talking points will take you through all of the key points of the legislative issues, and it includes a little summary at the bottom, like make sure that you've hit those bulleted points, because those are the key ones. So that should help guide your discussion. Something else that we have to help guide the overall meeting are the advocacy packets. These are going to be yellow folders, and they are given out one per meeting. So not everybody in a room will have a folder, but there should be at least one folder to leave behind for your meeting. These are going to serve as that framework for your meeting, and the materials help you structure that. So you can hand staff the information from the packets as you get to a particular issue to help guide the discussion. And really all of the information in here lends itself to the discussion that you're going to have. The packet will include one-pagers, which is what we call our one-page summary of an issue. That is what we leave behind with the staff. Ideally with the one-pager, even if they forget everything that you said, which they're not, they can go back to that one-pager and find all the information that they need on a given issue. And that's particularly important because that is the information they need to help make a decision, to help pitch it to their boss, and also to know how to contact someone to, say, co-sponsor a bill. There's also a fact sheet about occupational therapy, and this can be particularly helpful for your elevator speech about occupational therapy. It includes on the back demographics, how many OT, occupational therapists and occupational therapy assistants are in each state. We're unable to break that down by congressional district because we don't have the data, but you can still let them know how many OT practitioners are in their state. It also breaks it down by current setting and gives some of the educational requirements, and actually gives a nice little definition of occupational therapy as well. Staff find this really helpful, particularly if they have no idea about the profession, to be given the first and initial basic facts. We also have two other one-pagers that, or they're not one-pagers, but like leave behind, but they're one-pagers on issues. And they are about two recent studies that really help promote the value of occupational therapy. So one is on the study about how occupational therapy was the only spending category that reduced hospital readmissions. We find this very useful for talking about the therapy cap and why therapy services aren't always just a spender, that they really do help produce better outcomes. We also use this for home health. When we discuss, the researchers concluded that one reason why OTs might help reduce hospital admissions is that they can help determine if patients can live safely independently, that they can help with assistive devices to help people be safe. They perform home safety assessments, and these are all things that are key to home health and key to why we should potentially be the first ones in the door for home health and for home health assessments. I think even though it's about acute care hospitals, it backs up our position very well. And then finally, the occupational therapy can reduce nursing home admissions. This is another study that was in a well-respected journal, particularly well-respected in Washington, D.C., called Health Affairs, that showed that when a nurse, an OT, and a handyman went into someone's home, asked what they needed to live more independently, what they wanted to accomplish for the day, and then modifications were made that people were happier and had improved independence in their home, and that nursing home care was delayed. So this is also another really great one to back up our home health claim. So all of these materials in here are to help guide your meeting. There are also some brochures. One is a real basic, what is OT? Another is a good conversation starter. It's called the Grip and Grin brochure, How to Survive the Campaign Trail Without Repetitive Injuries. It may be surprising to you, but people who do shake hands a lot or sign a lot of autographs can actually have injuries to their hands. So this is a cute piece that can also be used to start the conversation. In summary, the key things to remember is that you should always be respectful of the staffer's time. Don't let a meeting go past 30 minutes. and if possible, keep it to 15 or 20 minutes. Always remember that you are a resource on the profession of occupational therapy. Offer yourself as a resource, both for the profession and ties that you may have to the community. That is what the offices need from you. Be sure to leave your packet with the staff. Maybe at the end of the meeting, the nerves get to you a little bit and you want to just walk out of the office. Be sure to leave the yellow packet with them and take your stapled information with you. Be sure to ask when and how to follow up with them, and be sure to get a business card so that you have the right email address with which to follow up. Be sure to follow up afterwards. There are materials talking about the best way to follow up with congressional offices. But most importantly, say thank you. Everybody likes to hear a thank you. And honestly, there are some offices who don't respond to meeting requests. So even meeting with you is a reason enough to say thank you. But if they are a supporter or they're continuing to support us or considering supporting us, make sure to say thank you. And remember, have fun. It's an exciting opportunity. And these staff take these meetings multiple times a week. So there's nothing to be nervous about. They're the pros, and they should help make you feel comfortable as well.